If you're working a normal job, you're saving a bit of money, and you're sitting there thinking, yeah, this is probably going to work out for me in the long run, I've got some bad news for you. It won't. And this is not because you're lazy or because you're stupid. It's simply because the math does not work anymore. In 2026, the system is broken. And nobody actually sits you down and shows you that. This isn't motivation or politics. And I'm not here to tell you that the system's rigged or that it's evil. I'm just going to walk you through the raw numbers that most people never put together in one place. And the thing is, once you see them, you can't unsee them. Now, let's begin by talking about the plan that most people are following. It goes roughly something like this. You get a job, you work hard, you save 10 to 15% of your salary, and you invest it. And eventually you have enough money to buy a house, and then you make it. And it feels responsible. And here's the thing, this plan used to work. It used to be reliable. 50 or 60 years ago, a totally average job could buy a stable middle-class life. Not because people were smarter or because they worked harder than we do today, but simply because asset prices were modest relative to wages. A house was only 3 or 4 times the average annual income. So therefore, saving actually closed the gap and time worked in your favor. That was truly a wage economy. Now, here's what's fundamentally changed in 2026. We do not live in a wage economy anymore. In 2026, the world is in an asset economy. And put simply, what that means is that assets compound and wages do not. Housing, land, equities, and businesses, that is where value goes today. Wages get taxed, capped, and eaten alive by the cost of living. And simply the relationship between what you earn in a normal job and what assets cost has completely blown out. And so many people are still running a life plan and philosophy that is designed for a wage economy in an asset economy. And that is the problem. And that is the break. So anyway, enough of that. Let's put some real numbers on this. Let's say that you are starting out in 2026. No family money, just a normal job, and your plan is to do everything right. You make $60,000 a year. After tax, that's maybe $45,000 depending on jurisdiction. Roughly 3.7K per month. Now, let's assume you're disciplined and you're saving 15%, which is realistic given the cost of living. That's around $6,000 to $7,000 per year. Now, let's be clear, this already puts you well ahead of most people. Now, let's take a look at what you're saving for. Just a basic house in a decent city. Nothing fancy, not a miserable shithole. So what does that cost today? Well, depending where you are, let's just say roughly $600,000 as a ballpark figure. In many places, the true number is closer to $1 million. So let's be generous and let's assume that your investments grow at 7% per year. That means every year you expect a 7% return. No years do you make a loss, you invest responsibly, and you get not an amazing, but not a bad result, just a typical outcome. And in the same time, let's assume that house prices compound at a rate of 5% per year. Now, here's the kicker. 5% on your $600,000 house is $30,000 per year. And 7% on your portfolio of savings in the early years is a few $100s. So yes, your rate is higher, but the thing that you are chasing is compounding on a base that completely dwarfs yours. And that is the runway effect. And a lot of people always just say, just give it time. All right, let's give it some time. Let's say that you save aggressively for 10 years. And in that time, you're working hard, you get promotions, your income grows. After a decade, you've maybe built a $100,000 portfolio. And that is a real achievement. Now look at the house. That same $600,000 house growing at 5% for 10 years is now nearly $1 million. A 20% deposit on that house is now $200,000. And you are not even halfway there. You're further away than when you started. And here is the part that people don't understand. From this point, time is working against you. Because the house is compounding on 1 million and you are compounding on 100,000. So every single year that you wait, the absolute gap gets bigger and you are not catching up. You are being outrun. And a lot of people hear this and say, that's fine, but I'll just wait another 5 years. Okay, 5 more years of discipline. Let's work it out. You push your savings aggressively to maybe 170,000. Meanwhile, the house is now 1.3 million. The deposit is 260,000 and you didn't move closer. You're even further behind. Now that's not bad luck. That's math. And this is where a lot of people start doing silly things. They will jump through every hoop imaginable. They might borrow money from friends or family. They will stretch themselves and they will over leverage. They tell themselves, once I get on the ladder, everything will be fine. And that belief is lethal because getting on the ladder doesn't solve this problem. It just changes the shape of it. Now, let's say that you make it. You buy $1 million place. You put down 200,000 and you borrow 800,000 from the bank. At today's rates, the payments on that property could be roughly $5,000 per month after tax. That is not freedom. That is a permanent dependency on a high income. If you miss a year, you burn out, you lose your job, the whole thing collapses. And perhaps the most sinister part is over 30 years, you will hand the bank hundreds of thousands of dollars of your hard-earned post-tax income in interest alone, often more than the original price of the house. You bought a liability that demands the best years of your life in exchange for stability. The house doesn't work for you. You work for the house. And here's the part that nobody wants to hear. This plan does not fail for a small number of people. It fails for most people who try it. And this is why most people never become financially free. Most people retire stressed, and most people stay dependent on wages until they are old. Not because they were irresponsible, but because the plan no longer produces escape. And the most dangerous part is that everyone around you is doing the same thing. So it feels safe, but normal doesn't mean viable. Normal just means common. And common failure looks like stability right up until it doesn't. If this plan really still worked at scale, most people would be winning, but they're not. And that's not a coincidence. If your plan is to work hard and to save a bit and to invest and then buy a house and hope that that equals freedom somehow, you should know that that plan doesn't suddenly blow up. It just slowly boxes you in. And once you actually accept that, your true options collapse fast. There are really only a handful of ways out of this, and none of them are comfortable. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next video.